Hey, welcome aboard, everybody. Big hugs from the E2KG network. We're back with another episode of the Dark Hypotheses here on a Wednesday night, a little bit getting close to 10:30 p.m. on the East Coast. And we are here to do a rundown of episode number 12 of Dark Matter, because this is a Dark Matter fan cast that features spoilers, tons of them. So if you haven't watched the episode, please go ahead and stop this podcast, go watch your episode, and then come back and give this a listen. Or if you're here for the live show, I assume you've already watched the episode, and it doesn't matter. I am one of your co-hosts, and tonight I am here, as always, with my partner co-host, Mr. Dave Pecci. How you doing, Dave?
I'm doing good. You got a spiffy T-shirt and nice yellow hat tonight.
Cool. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So, most importantly, I do have to get on the social media tonight faster than even usual, because in addition to an episode rundown tonight, we are also doing a renewed Dark Matter
rally, right?
Yes, yeah.
So
I'm trying to pin the
my
tweet.
Apologies for the late start, because I totally forgot. I thought we were just doing a rally tonight, and then so I realized, I got to watch that show.
Yeah. No, not at all.
So sorry, man.
No, not at all. So here's what might happen tonight. If there are fans of the Dark Matter show who are highly concerned about the potential for its renewal, or the potential that it might not renew, we are asking them to call into here on the live show via a very convoluted Twitter verification, validation mechanism that I'm doing for security reasons, and just to make sure I don't get some crackpot to call into the show who really doesn't care about Dark Matter. So I've tried to set up some type of tin can strung together system to try and fleece people before we let them in the door. So while we're doing the rundown of episode 12, one of those fans might call in. They might join the show. At a minimum, we're going to give them 5 minutes to profess their love for the Dark Matter show on the Sci-Fi Network, and tell us why they want it to be renewed. Maybe talk to us about their favorite scene this season or their favorite episode ever. But all of this is to generate some buzz and some volume to communicate to Sci-Fi Network that there is an army of fans. I refer to them as the International Dark Matter Global Community. Wait, that's too many words. I think I just call them the Global Dark Matter Community, the GDMC. We just wanted to give them...
I think we're overdue for a Joseph Malozzi visit too, right? Because he said he's...
That's possible. We may reach out to him for the finale episode. I'm trying to be sensitive to. He's probably, he's
busy.
Yeah. Well, and tightly wired into watching what happens with this renewal. Now, I don't. Again, we've mentioned it before. I don't know exactly, but when I go back and I look at blog posts and things about the renewal last year, it seems like that renewal came through in September.
Okay.
But maybe I'm wrong. And it's also possible that it got to Mr. Malozzi and the stars and cast members of the show earlier, but they weren't able to say anything about it to the press until later. So I don't really know. I say that because I'm hoping that we actually have some additional time for this to happen before we hit that point where kind of, if they haven't done it by now, you may as well assume that they're not going to do it threshold. So I'm hoping, we have more time. However, I also want them to just go ahead and get about the business of renewing it so we can all relax, right? And just enjoy the final episode. And like I said, I'm sure it's stressing Mr. Malozzi out and other members of the cast and crew. So with that, Dave, why don't we do what we always do, and I will pass it over to you and let you give us your high-level rundown without getting into any of the super detailed of the episode while I get the social media out.
All right. And on that talk of renewal, so the season finale is this week. I believe it's going to be on the 25th. So I'm hoping, at least by the beginning of September that we hear something about the renewal. Because I'll be honest, the only thing that I watch on Sci-Fi is Dark Matter. And it's about, the only sci-fi show that I'm actively watching. I'm hoping the new Star Trek will be good, but who knows? It's really hard to compete with the older Star Treks. But for now, Dark Matter is one of my favorite shows, one of my sci-fi shows, and I eagerly hope to see it return and gain in popularity, more than ever. And onto that, to my general review of this last week's episode. I know what the title is, but I like to call this episode the Dirty Little Secrets episode, because a lot of what it was, I felt like, was dirty little secrets coming out. Not all of them were dirty little secrets, but well, maybe they were. But nonetheless, it was very interesting. And again, there was references to Future 5. And gosh, man, I guess I always love that term for Future 5 and all the things coming. And it was really great. A lot of surprises, a lot of twists and turns. Just kind of a really great wrap up for things in this season. And I'm really hoping my kind of guess for the next episode is that we see the Ferris core and the alternative reality 3 and 4 and alternate reality Android get what's coming to them finally, so that they're done with, so that we can kind of wrap that up. And as they mentioned in the episode, all the things that Future 5 has mentioned or have been talked about, and then at the very end of the episode, we got one more that will be coming that probably won't be revealed in this season, but we know it will probably be coming up in the next season. So we have the Dwarf Star Conspiracy, which I'm now realizing it's probably related to the Terminators of the Dark Matter world. Machida, which just happened in that episode, and gosh, I'm blanking on the other one that we had, and we still don't know if we got to see the double cross, and I really want to say that one has already happened. So if you're ready, Agus, please chime in anytime. Otherwise, I'll keep doing my super stalls. All right. So interesting to note, though, that there was the one thing that I wish that we could have known more about in that episode was this is kind of a little too much, but maybe I'll wait and hold on to it. But it's just kind of, there were some reveals that I wish they revealed and they didn't hold on to. For instance, there was a secret about 5 that I wish they could have just told us instead of making us wait. So it's kind of interesting. I think we're going back. I think the next seasons we're going back to this original learning more about everyone's history again, which could be good. And I really hope seeing the end of this episode and watching I know obviously you didn't see the trailer again, but Ryu 4 isn't dead yet, so I'm really hoping that we can see him join the Raza again. Really hoping. So, anyways, surprises. Another thing too, I'm not sure about. I don't know if we're gonna see Sarah and the robots come back. I feel like that's going to be something that comes back in the next season, because there's just no way that there'd be too much going on in the next episode if they all put it together.
Yeah, so thanks a lot, Dave. I still got to get the Facebook post out, but what took a little longer tonight is, like I said, we're trying to do this Renew Dark Matter rally. I know I've screwed this up already because I didn't generate this huge buzz beforehand to ask people to call in. And again, I normally try and squelch all the alerts, but given that we're trying to do this Renew Dark Matter rally, and I'm hyper concerned that somebody might DM me trying to get a link to join the live show, I'm going to leave the alerts on my phones on tonight, so I apologize. That may be a little distracting. And actually, I take that back. I'm going to squelch the phones because we may be on the verge of a Twitter storm here. This has happened the last couple live shows, so hopefully we won't miss anyone. I am also going to get the chat room on my more prominently on my screen here.
So real quick, who do you think Five's sister is? Because it seemed like Five knew the person.
Definitely. Man, there's a lot of possibilities, right? I mean, it could be so I guess the first thing that leapt to my mind, and you're catching me flat-footed, so I'm talking through I'm thinking while I'm talking through this. So let's not put me on the hook for saying for certain. So, but the first one that jumped to my mind when I saw her reaction was if we go back to the travel back in time, the time travel episode.
Okay.
My first thought is that her sister is actually the woman who invented the FTL drive.
That's my thought too. That was my exact thought.
Now
they're both kind of smart and
right. Now what makes that which means she's actually which means Five is actually a descendant of the kid who had a crush on her in the Time Machine episode, in some way. So what makes that a little janky and what might cause that to unravel a little is that means that in this universe, in this fiction, in this mythology, that FTL drives have been created very recently.
Yeah.
Because even if her sister is one of these not weird sibling relationships, but one of these sibling relationships where like there's 20 years or something that separate the two, that would still mean that the FTL drive was just created, within the last 10 to 20 years. And you feel like that.
Right. I definitely kind of get that feeling too.
Yeah. So you would think or feel like that technology had been around for longer, or else it would be more of a topic of conversation. But it's possible, right? Could two be her sister? Maybe.
No, there's no way. I don't think so.
Right. There would be a whole lot of additional machinations that would have to have happened for that to be the case. But it's clearly somebody that we're supposed to know, and clearly somebody she has met before. Could it be Commander Truffaut?
That'd be an interesting relationship. That might be something, that we haven't seen. But that's like a huge age gap, though, too.
All depending on how they characterize it on the show, right? I mean, they could just say, I don't know. That would be. I don't want to throw shade at Tori Higginson's age. I happen to think she's a very attractive woman, so let's not get all up in arms. But that could be something like a 30-year difference or so. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. Who else do you think it could be?
I can't really think of anybody right now that we've seen constantly or that made enough of an impact that I'd remember them.
Yeah,
I bet you, like, when we find out, it's going to be like, oh, of course, kind of one of those moments.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe some more people will occur to us. It's really one of those things where we kind of need to go through. Dadnabbit, and I had it open.
So, just general question about the episode. Which do you think was the biggest shocker for you in this whole episode?
I think the most interesting to me was the reveal for 3, the Marcus Boone reveal.
Really?
Notion,
okay.
Yeah, the notion that that Sarah got sick because of all of the and I didn't follow because I was actually trying to set up all these rules for the joining the renewed Dark Matter rally while I had the episode playing in the background. So the drug, or was it sterilium? Was that what?
Yeah, it was the mine, the sterilium, right?
Yeah. So the notion that she got sick because he was stockpiling sterilium in the cabin, and not only so because it was most interesting to me because not only did it get revealed, but there was kind of sort of essentially a resolution of it, right? So all the other things are outstanding, but by him in his what do you call it, transit travel or whatever,
right?
By that clone allowing himself to be killed, therefore the memory and the knowledge that he gained not being transferred back to the host, he kind of broke the blockchain, right? So theoretically now there shouldn't be a way for 3 to find out. But it was also very interesting that so when that was discussed a few episodes ago, we noted, and I'm blanking on the actress's name, but the actress who plays Sarah, we noted the look of
right when they were sleeping in the bed, yeah,
right when she rolls over, indicating that that she knew what Ryu had told Marcus Boone, and it's unlikely, we hope, that she would ever tell 3.
Yeah.
So that one was both revealed and kind of resolved in the same episode. So it was what I found the most interesting. What about you?
For me, it was a cross-up between that 2 had a child and the fact that 2 totally killed Misaki, but it goes to killing Misaki was like just perfect. And the classic line, "This is for Nyx." And I was thinking, yes, that she freaking had to die. I just hated her so much in that episode.
Yeah.
Just
And I like that that a definitive characterization was kind of put around her as a rapper in that episode just before that happened, right? So Teku had a conversation with her, and then he walked up very close and intimately to her and looked in her eyes. And I forget the specific line, but he basically said that she was crazy.
Psychopath. She was a psychopath.
Right. And then she herself came back and said, "Well, I'm just a mass murderer." So it was a very...
No, that was with 6 in Misaki.
You're right.
Yeah.
So it was nice that there was a very tightly wrapped bow put on her that established a very firm label. Somebody else that said that she was crazy. She herself confirmed it. She applied to herself her own label indicating that she was a mass murderer. Therefore, thou shalt feel no remorse, right? So when she is taken out. So we get vengeance. We feel that it's a justified murder if you believe in that concept. And we get a very nice, concise, succinct, direct characterization of the why behind it. So I really liked that. The Marcus Boone reveal still is higher for me, but I do like how that was kind of eloquently pulled together.
And she kind of died by the same way she killed Nyx. Was also very poetic justice.
Yes, which was apparently I didn't remember this quite with Nyx, but apparently it was a very kind of slow, like gasping breath. Like she was still like struggling to take breaths as like 2 and 4 were getting out of the room. So I don't know. I'm just kind of a guy who says if you do something really bad, then your comeuppance should linger a little bit. That's just me. So it was neat that happened. So I wanted to talk a little bit about Ryu. So this has been burbling for 11 episodes prior to it. We've kind of seen him kind of painted as the villain. While I despise the term to the very core of its definition, kind of as the anti-hero. He has some lines in this in the closing scenes about all the wrong that he has done. There are some things. There's some other lines throughout the episode that talk about. It's kind of a very Darth Vader-y kind of thing, right? he's done some bad things, but there's still some good in him.
You're right. It is very Darth Vader-ish.
Yeah. Are there still elements of 4 in there or not? Is he salvageable? Like, nobody knows. So it just kind of, and you in particular have been one who didn't like the cutscene approach to tracking back and forth with his storyline throughout the season. Now you've gotten an episode that is full on all about Ryu and House Ashida, and I wanted to kind of get your take.
But here's the thing. I thought this episode was more of Ryu, and then we got 4 back, honestly. And I like 4 more than I like Ryu. So I thought that was really good that, he kind of returned to, who he was.
Yeah, and definitely in that closing dialogue with 2, right? His intonations, his mannerisms, all the things that he talks about feel very much like 4. Raises a lot of questions, right? How much separation is there really between the personas, right, in their heads, between the one who has the memories blocked off and the one who has the memories? I don't know that there is that much. At the end of the day, whether he's 4 or Ryu, he has some sense of honor that exceeds that shown by Misaki and by Ryu's mother, and a few other characters that we've seen in the Ishida Empire who are more about like might makes right. And apparently Ishida's father also kind of lived by that to a certain degree. So it was nice seeing him. I like the fight between he and Misaki. I liked the opening fight between he and 2, where 2 comes at him with the dual wielded swords.
Yeah,
I thought that was really awesome. So the blink drive is again another central theme in this show. Is it too powerful a technology for any one person, one ship to possess? 2, as captain of the Raza, but on a larger scale, the Raza in general has 2 of the blink drives now. One of which is operational, one of which theoretically is not. So lots of questions, right? Do you think the blink drive should remain as a mechanic in the story going forward? Let's say we go to season 4 with this and 5. And I bring this up because kind of one interesting thing that happened, and again, I compare this show, probably compare every show to a lot of my favorite shows, which are obviously Buffy and Angel. I'm a big Whedon fan. Buffy, Angel, Firefly. And I've made several references this season to the similarities that I feel like I see to this and Angel. Now, the big switcheroo in Angel, as you go through seasons 4 and 5, there's one other shift, is they move headquarters, right, where their offices are. Early in the show, I think in season 2, there's a big shift when they transfer from a little office that Angel has rented out, and that they share with some other companies in the building. But the really big shift is in season, and they move into a hotel. The really big shift is in season 5, when they actually move in and occupy and become part of the structure of the primary organization that they've been trying to take down for the whole 5 seasons, which is Wolfram and Hart. So one of the questions I ask is, would you like to see something like that, where kind of a core element of the show is stripped, flipped, or somehow significantly altered? What happens if in a season 4, season 5, everyone has blink drives? What happens if the blink drive is modified some way and becomes not the threat to the galaxy that it is? Or do you want to see the blink drive remain as part of the ongoing mythology for the remaining 2 seasons?
I think I'd rather like to see it one way or the other, where it ends up where everybody has it, or it's just still very, or it's gone totally. And honestly, I'd like to see it, kind of my plan is that it'll come down where if they destroy the blink drive, it'll totally change the future. Or if they keep the blink drive, that the future will remain, that dark future that we saw, or somewhere close to it. I thought that would be an interesting, it'll be interesting to see what happens as we get towards, that possible dark future.
So one other thing that I wanted to ask you is 5 makes a very poignant line in this episode where she says, 3 says, now I'm losing track on it. There's a discussion about whether or not they have already seen a future that is set, and I think 3 and 5 are arguing about whether or not they have the ability to change the future. And 3 says, we've already changed it once, haven't we? Clearly we've proven that it's possible. And 5 says, and 5 asks the question, did we? Have we thought about whether or not it was not so much changing time as fulfilling destiny?
Right.
And so what do you think about that concept, again being a transition in season 4, as far as, is the rest of the show about them fulfilling their destiny, trying to avoid it, change it, control it? And is that a good setup for the final 2 seasons of the show?
No, I think that's a great, way to see what happens. I love that it's a new theme. It'd be totally different. And, like with any I'm trying to think of really good science fiction examples. Like I'm thinking back to Star Trek. In Star Trek, totally you can affect the future and the timeline and all that. And I think it would be a good constant. I don't want it to be too overwhelming, but I would like to see it played out more. Because I hate to say it, but with Flash, I'm just so burned out that I don't want to see time being the only thing that's talked about day in and day night. Yeah.
Amen. Well, let's not get too much into that because I haven't watched the tail end of season 3. Although that's the show's fault, not mine. But there you have it, right? I haven't watched it because I lost interest in that being like the central theme from week to week. Incidentally, completely and entirely off topic, I am going back. So Smallville is a show that started at a time in my life when I was unable to watch it at its premiere. And I think you and I are similar, Dave, and we've brought this up before, that when for whatever reason something's going on in our lives where we're not able to be there at the start of a show, or say miss the release of a movie, it frequently becomes just a thing that we never get around to, right?
Yeah.
And that's definitely me with Smallville and several other things, just because I led a life where I miss out on a lot of that stuff. But I'm starting to catch back up with it now, and I'm realizing that the particle accelerator mechanic in the Flash was very much the meteor shower mechanic from Smallville. So yeah, that had been done before.
Are you bashing on the Flash? Is that your point here?
I still like the show. It's just that it rocketed to be my number 1 in season 1, and it has fallen down to the bottom of what is already a short list, right? So it's interesting. So back to Dark Matter. So 6. So one of the key elements for me in this episode is, I think one of the things that was proven, maybe it was deliberately targeted, is that this show is still at its core about mysteries, conspiracy, not knowing how something's going to turn out, who done it, that kind of thing. And what was very interestingly done this episode is, in some cases, you could look at the show in the cast, because that whole thing is about the cast, maybe a little bit about the ship and the crew, but some of the characters had been taken to a point where they were kind of losing a bit of their mystery. Like, you kind of felt like you knew who they were. But what this episode did was it completely dashed all that to hell, right? It reset everybody with an individual mystery, and definitely, like I said, very deliberately, I'll say maliciously, like, re-injected the show with that whodunit factor, right?
which is great, and I'm so happy actually.
Right, because I'm not going to say it felt like it was drifting away, because I think that whole thing was intentional. I think Mr. Royalty deliberately kind of like you do with camera work, right? You deliberately draw the audience's attention one way so that they maybe miss something else that they have to go back and rewatch. But it seems like we were kind of our attention had been deliberately drawn from that over the course of this season. And this was the effort to deliberately kind of, and rapidly, like with a crowbar, like, snap your head back to, hey, this show's about mystery. This show is about intrigue. And now it's about, who is 2's daughter? What is 3's relationship with Sarah going to be now? What happens to 4 and, 5 finding her sister. And
who betrayed 6?
Right.
Was it his friend? Yeah, was it his wife? We don't know.
I don't know who else it would be. There's no other recurring character on the show that's from the GA other than Anders. Who I love, by the way, because the actor who portrays Anders, I don't want to butcher his name. I think it's Tavarian.
And also the android. Don't forget her mystery now too.
Right. Which was so that to me could easily be season 4. That the whole android revolt. Or
at least part of it, yeah, for sure.
Right.
Because now she's got this huge moral dilemma where I kind of thought it was funny and shocking at the same time that the motion chip was really destroy all humans.
Right. It was kind of like adware, right?
It was adware.
I put the software upgrade in, and now all of a sudden it's giving me ads, right? That's kind of what I was thinking. Because we talked last episode about this whole similarity in the upgrades, right? Or is it adware, or is it like Clippy, right? From old Microsoft days, right? You have this goofy virtual assistant,
Clippy,
but you're like, dude, I don't need your help. I know how to cut and paste, right? Just get out of my screen and out of my viewport and leave me alone, right? So yeah, I was going to mention that actor's name because I thought he followed me on Twitter, but he does not, or at least I'm not finding him right away. But yes, but the actor who plays Anders, frequently, gives me a little love on Twitter. So, but yeah, so here's the twist. So a few episodes ago, not the time travel episode. Gosh, it was the locked room episode, right? It was I can't remember, but it was the one where we found out that 6 still had a family, and Anders showed him where his family was, and it was clear, I think, and so the daughter, when she came out, was talking about daddy, but it was clear that she was referring to a stepfather, not 6.
Yeah.
What if we pull a classic Spawn, right? And the person who betrayed him was Anders, so that Anders could shack up with 6's wife.
Yeah, that's true. Definitely one possibility.
Yeah. So you already mentioned it. One of the other big reveals this episode was that 2 has a child somewhere. She said that was mixed with the DNA. So it sounds like it was I don't want to characterize it, a child that was not created through intercourse. It was a child that was built, not born, as the title of the last episode was, composed of material from 2 and also the DNA of her creator, Dr. Irina Shaw. So this evokes visions of X-23, right? In my head, is this child some wild, unchained beast full of 18th generation, mutated nanites? And is she running around uncontrolled? Is there I forget what the name of the project was that experimented on Wolverine. Is there a Project X somewhere that has her locked up, trying to turn her into an assassin, or what?
Yeah.
I don't know. What are your thoughts on that one?
It's quite possible, right? Because it makes me wonder, like, why this, lock and key, and what an interesting name for Crichton. Like, it makes me wonder, like, who is this person that's, watching her? So I think you're right. This could be a super child we're dealing with.
Right. So, and the big question is, so you looked ahead to the trailer, so I'm going to have to alter the question slightly for you. Does 2 kill 4? Do you want her to kill 4?
So,
and why or why not?
In the trailer.
Before you go to the trailer, let me mention one thing.
I'm sorry if I spoiled that for you.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Occupational hazard. I accept the risk. I guess my big question is, when Ryu and 2 are talking in the brig, Ryu, paints it as it's a binary, right? She has 2 choices, and really no choice. Oh geez. So he's done it to me again. So Mr. Malazzi is in our chat. One of my things is oh yes, so he's been correcting me the whole time. So Jeff Teravainen is the actor who plays Anders on the show. And so, again, it's going to be interesting to see if he's the one who betrayed 6. Episode 307 was I Wish I Could Believe You. That was the episode I was trying to recall where 6 was captured and they were monkeying with his mind. And in that is where he saw that he had a wife and kid. So the question I was formulating for you was they both talk about whether or not she should kill Ryu as a binary choice, either do it or not. I kept thinking that there was going to be an injection into that dialogue that, no, there's a third option. The third option is turn him back to 4. Right? I think they have figured out the procedure, and Android can do it, or Suki can do it.
Oh.
Right? So, but there's a flaw in that too, right? Because if you follow that path, then what you always have to worry about is, but does he somehow flip back, right? It's the same, we almost call it a time loop, right? Does history repeat itself, and does 4 still have that innate desire
to go back to Ryu, though?
Right. And what happens if he changes now and he knows that somebody else has assumed the throne? So that's all I wanted to get out. Go ahead and tell me what you think.
So the question is, do I think she kills him, or what's your question now?
So it's a list of questions. So one, does she kill him? You already know that she doesn't. I guess so. My amplified question is, my elicitation is, do you want her to, or do you not want her to, regardless of what you've seen in the trailer? If she does or doesn't, what are your guesses on why or why not? And what do you think about the third option of do you try to turn it back to 4?
Emotional response, I don't want her to kill him. Just because I just feel for him now, and I feel that it was kind of a Darth Vader thing, as we mentioned. He made some mistakes. I'm kind of still resentful because, when shit hits the fan, he's like, go kill the prisoners. And I was like, he was about to kill all of them.
Well, I don't know, because again, I don't know if that was Ryu or if that was psychopath Misaki, who was just off on her own script and had intentions to kill the prisoners.
I'm pretty sure I thought Ryu said it.
You're right. You're probably right.
Yeah.
Well, so here's a bit of a cheat. So Mr. Malazzi says, well, we don't know that Ryu gave that order.
Okay.
So let me also just mention this other point in this chat. So turning Ryu back to 4, he said that's a possible option that could be discussed, but it opens up a can of worms since you'd be dealing with a blank slate, right? So he would be 4, but he potentially might not have the memories of 4 from the awakening to the in-between time for him, right? Between the awakening and him reverting back to Ryu. So, and so Mr. Rossi also says exactly. Misaki says the Emperor said he'd ordered the execution, but I don't know that we actually see him saying it on screen.
Okay. Gotcha. So anyways, it's, it's kind of like, we were blaming him originally for killing Nyx, and everybody knows now he didn't kill Nyx. And at any point in time, he could have, double-crossed any of them, and instantly, but, he tells them secrets, and he doesn't have to do that. And the other thing that surprised me too is I totally thought that we were going to see the alternative characters. So I honestly think that he's a very noble man. He's kind of like, he's got the samurai code. So I feel that he's still got this code of honor, and I feel that he didn't get rid of I think his name was Tega. And
Teku.
So the simple fact that he, it's kind of like he was juggling light and dark, and I don't ever completely feel that he went totally to the dark side. And even in this episode, Taiku talked to him. He's like, no, don't kill everybody again. Just wait and think this out. And you could tell he's indecisive about all of this. And that's what eventually made Misaki snap. Like, oh, you're indecisive. Why can't you just make these evil decisions like right away? And so emotionally, I think that 2, I think she made that call not to kill him because she's the type. This whole kind of series is about redemption, and they've all made mistakes, and she's willing to give people a second chance. And like she says that she's going to be the one that eventually does it when it happens. And, despite what the other crew thinks, I think our new moral compass right now has been too, because she's like, get rid of the blink drive, don't let it fall into bad hands. And it's interesting, it's interesting to see too, because she's in agreement with 6 now, and before in the past they were always at odds ends. So that's just kind of where I'm heading.
Okay, yeah, we'll move on from that. So,
did I answer your question? I'm sorry, I don't know if I.
No, you did. You just brought up another thing to consider, but it could be a potential rabbit hole. And congratulations, Dave. So Mr. Malazzi says great analysis of 2's mindset. So I was about to challenge that, but apparently you have his backing, so I'll back up. I don't know what this note is. This note says where. Oh, it's a minor note.
Here's another thing. I wonder if 2 still feels that 4 is still kind of a part of the Raza, and so she's still kind of, her goal is to protect her crew, and still 4 is technically kind of still one of them. So, and even the android kind of mentions that. She's like, he is kind of one of us still, but he is kind of, a risk.
Right. No, yeah, exactly. So I guess one thing that I'm still curious about is what exactly was so there's a few things here that, because of the way things have unfolded, potentially we may never know. And one of those is And one and one of those is, what exactly was the deal, or is the deal, between Ferris Core, Ishida, there's a third party in there somewhere.
The one that they were fighting, right?
Pure, but no, that's not what I was thinking. It's between Ferris Core, Ishida, and the in the alternate universe Raza crew. So
right.
the Course 2 was captured by alternate universe Marcus Boone. He's gone off the grid. Apparently, and the only live arrangement and discussion that we've seen has been between Ferris Core and the alternate universe Raza crew. So what exactly was the arrangement between Ferris Core and Ishida? How is that going to play out?
Right.
So yeah, so it'll be interesting to see if we ever see that loop closed, or if that's going to be something that's going to be a bit outstanding.
Jump into the trailer again. This might be interesting. I have this random guess that we saw the fall of Ishida in this episode, but wouldn't it be funny if the next episode was the rise of Ishida, and that all of a sudden that they realize that there's going to be somebody has to take kind of peaceful control of the galaxy, right? Because we know that there's all of this civil war coming, kind of like when the United States had our civil war, we needed to have unity going on. And so it might be, that somebody has to, take control, and maybe the Raza has to jump to that conclusion that maybe the Ishida Empire would be the best.
Well, so this is the ultimate extension, right, of the philosophical discussion of the Raza and the blink drive, right? The Raza has the ability to, and I think they've discussed this amongst themselves as part of the crew before. They have the ability to clearly tip the tide of war in one direction or the other.
Yeah.
Should they directly throw in as an ally with a specific corporation? And you would think that, just given the relationships that they've built over time, and the strongest of those being with Commander Truffaut of Mikkei, that they would throw in with Mikkei. But then they took a very specific choice at some point in one episode and said, no, what we really need to do is we need to stay neutral. Now, all that being said, again, if you spool out, right, the most extreme action they could take, would be to become a faction of themselves and say, look, we have the blink drive. Anybody who doesn't want to be, anybody who doesn't want us popping in, right, to their nation's capital and whisking away all of their leadership, right, to some random point in time or some point in the future where things can't, whatever, then immediately declare your allegiance to us, right? So they're kind of the Daenerys. They could become the kind of the Daenerys Targaryen, right, of the dark matter universe. Being the only force with dragons, right? So the question is do they get to a point where they view the world as so broken, right? The universe as so broken and incapable of healthfully reconstructing itself, that's the point they ultimately come to, right? They go, look, we can't trust the universe to fix itself. We're going to step in and fix it. And then we're going to pull I forget what the presidential candidate's name was last year, who said he was going to get elected to office, fix campaign reform, and then resign and turn it over to his vice president, right? I mean, so that's a thing that they could do, and that's in a sort of, I don't think it will be that extreme, but to a certain extent, that's kind of the shoe that we're waiting to see drop, right? See if they get to a point where they just, look, the war has been going on now for a full season. There were inklings of it kind of rattling around at the end of last season. When we go to season 4, we're going to be entering the second year, 2.5 year point of the war. And the question is, how much longer does it go on? And does the Raza crew elect to jump in and resolve it?
I just had a really good question to ask you. Sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
And this is very theoretical. What would you think if Ryu decided to give the emperorship to Taiku? That he doesn't trust himself. He feels Taiku is better. Because I almost feel like that could be a strong possibility of what happens, and then he decides to be back with the Raza.
It could. I don't see him giving it to him. He could make him the Imperial Regent, and take a leave of absence, right? And journey with the Raza crew to maybe in an effort to set a right the things that he had done wrong, maybe till he feels he achieves some point where he is worthy of the throne. And I think that's a risk that he could take. If it were anyone else, right, the question that the royal would have to ask themselves is, clearly I can't entrust anyone to willingly turn this back over to me when I make my return. But I think he could entrust Teku to do that. So yeah, I see that as a possibility. I wonder, and it sounds like from Mr. Malazzi that creatively this is not a direction that they really want to go. But again, I'll just spool as if we don't have that knowledge. Ryu Ishida could come back and make that suggestion that I made earlier. He himself could say, "I was a better human being when I was 4. Please turn me back." Right?
Yeah.
So as always, it'll be interesting to see that unfold. So you mentioned the last topic that I wanted to talk about, Android. My quick notes in between before we get to that are, I was really happy to see Misaki get her comeuppance, and I was really happy to see the exoneration of Teku. Right, that through action and dialogue, what we wind up seeing is that he wasn't. It appears he wasn't a traitor. That he wasn't fomenting the rebellion, and that he was being set up by Misaki. So just as happy as I was to see Misaki clearly labeled and exemplified as a villain, I was also glad to see that the other side of that equation was Teku's exoneration. Such as it can be on a show like Dark Matter, which kind of shades and shadows and colors everything, so you're never really certain that you know anything. But it appears that was the case. So final thing that I want to talk through before we go to our last segment is, you mentioned it, Android, the notion that the emotion chip has Chase as a ride along, which just as an IT guy and a software engineer, just still bugs me that I feel like I've installed something and it has this other package on it that wasn't advertised to me. So
it makes me wonder if Joseph Willowsy worked in IT or something before, right?
Right. So, but it brings up the serious question that we asked last episode, which is, this is going to be an exciting thing to see unfold. Excuse me, and I had half the mind that Android would be in opposition to Victor and his notion, what appeared to be an inkling and a notion at the time, that there was going to be, we saw him murder the human owner of the other android last episode. So clearly, he doesn't have any sense of like the 3 laws of robots or whatever from Isaac Asimov, that these androids have. Sorry, it was me rubbing on my lapel mic. I forgot I was wearing it. That they have transcended to this place where the scary place that we worry about all machines going, right? That they have determined that, the full culmination of their programming, which was probably originally to protect humans or serve humans or whatever, or better the universe of the galaxy, that the most efficient path to that is to kill the humans. So, and it sounds like Android is not convinced that that's the best thing to do, and obviously probably helped by her emotional attachment to Portia Lynn /2. So any other comments kind of on that, or where that's going, or whether you like it or don't like it? Or
it's interesting because, we see future Android looks super gnarly. So I wonder if that comes out of some sort of Android revolution, and maybe that's what leads to the dark future that we see. We really don't know what the future is also like. In that future Android world, for all we know, it could have been the robot future. It could have been the Sheeta future. It could have been it'd be interesting to know. Or even, there's so many possibilities. The robots, might rise up and make their own little empire, if they don't end up conquering the world some way.
Sorry, yeah. So right, we just don't know. We just don't know how it's going to go. So,
did you have a conspiracy for this episode, by the way, or a hypothesis?
It probably would be, or would have been, the 5 question that you asked me at the opening. That is, I have absolutely no inkling of who 2's daughter is. Right, can't help with that one. The 3 dark secret revealed was kind of resolved. 6's I find interesting, but I think it'll be, my guess is that will be revealed and resolved pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So the one that I'm latched onto is the conspiracy theory of Emily, right? Who her sister is. And again, my guess at the time, I do have the Dark Matter Wiki pulled up, and I'm going to be looking through that to see if I can see every female character that's been on the show that 5 has met, to just kind of go through the Rolodex of who her sister might be. But yeah, my current conspiracy theory would be that it is that she is actually the descendant of the kid who had a crush on her from the time travel episode. And that it is the young lady who they revealed is the inventor of the FTL drive. So what about you? Did you have a major conspiracy takeaway from this one of what the future holds?
I mean, my only one would be that there'd be the rise of the Sheeta Empire instead of the fall.
Right. So they did mention too in the final conversation between Ryu and 2. I'm pretty sure that and again, I need to get this list that we have written down somewhere, but that the 2 names mentioned in what I still call the thread of 8 conversation between Future 5 and Android is there were 2 names that were mentioned, both of which that start with a K sound. When I look at them on subtitles, one starts with a K and one starts with a C, I think. But I want to say that one of the names in the closing minute or 2 minutes of this episode, when they're discussing her daughter, is a name that Ryu mentions. And I believe we see Melissa O'Neill kind of look, side-eyed as if she's trying to recall if that's the name that 5 mentioned on the mess deck. So I think that name is connected between, like I said, the conversation about the thread of 8 in the Time Box episode and this final conversation between Ryu with reference to 2's daughter. So anything else?
Right.
Anything else that you wanted to go over before we go to our last segment?
No. I got the thread of 8 right here, and I don't think we need to rehash it again.
Okay, so Kryden and Karina are the 2 K names that are mentioned. Mr. Moss is pointing out, and Ryu tells 2 that she entrusted her daughter to someone named Kryden, right? So right. It was the same name. So it'll be interesting to see how that unfolds and see who that actually is. So
I wonder if we can ask why we have Mr. Malazzi if he remembers what the name of the FTL creator was, because I know it was like blurted out.
Yes, so we can ask that, and we'll give him a minute or 2.
Did we ever get anybody that wanted to come on tonight, or no?
We did not. So it could be because, look, if nobody joins tonight for the Renew Dark Matter rally, that's entirely on me. That is not representative of the passion of the community. That is because what I should have done, but I've just been crazy busy this week at night, is I should have done like a Rolling Thunder social media campaign and made sure that people understood how that was going to go down. So Mr. Malazzi says that the name of the kid was Jake Connor. So then we just need to look up the name of the daughter or granddaughter.
Right. Yeah.
So,
drum roll while we wait. the name that's escaped us for the past 2 or 3 podcasts.
well, I think he might be able to answer more directly here in a minute.
And the wait time, I guess a quick reminder, Dark Matter Season 3 is hitting Netflix September 25th.
I think he might be able to answer more directly here in a minute.
Oh.
Yeah, so joining the show live, we have co-creator of Dark Matter and showrunner, Mr. Joseph Malazzi. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us.
Hey, thank you for having me.
No problem at all, sir. I think we'll just let you take it away. So you've heard most of our conversation of episode number 12 for this season. My final gift to you.
Yeah.
Any feedback or anything you wanted to add to the things we kicked around?
You know, I'd rather not, just because you guys do such a terrific job in your analysis that I feel as though I'd be taken away from everything you put forth, and I'm going to let the show enlighten you rather than having me sort of come in and run roughshod over your painstakingly assembled hypotheses.
Well, thank you very much, sir. That's flattering and humbling. If you weren't you, I might say wrong, but we appreciate it. So I'm going to try and tread carefully as I ask. I guess one thing I've been wanting to ask since the first time you were on the show, and it didn't occur to me till afterwards, is I have not read what I understand is the original comic book.
Yep.
So how closely is the show tracking to the comic, if that's a question that you're comfortable with?
Yeah, to be fair, I mean, the actual script came first for the pilot episode, and it was I worked on it while I was working on Stargate, and rather than go out with it and do the normal route of going out and pitching and trying to set it up, I got my start in development. And I know that, original ideas are a bit of a long shot, but everybody likes IPs, established properties, books, comic books. So I ended up approaching Dark Horse Comics about turning the first 2 episodes, the opening arc, into a 4-issue comic book and using that as a launch pad towards a television series. And so they came on board and we released the first 4 episodes, which really more or less pretty closely follow the first 2 episodes of the series, and they're collected into trade paperback that essentially we took out and used to sell the series. There are differences. The character of 5, for instance, everybody assumed she was a he because he's actually very tomboyish the way she is drawn in the comic book, and we never actually refer to 5 as a him or a her. The character of 4 was actually fairly androgynous, long hair, and the android was actually male in the comic book. And when it came time to auditioning, holding auditions, we actually opened up those 2 roles specifically, the role of 4 and the role of the android, to all genders. So, we could have had a very different looking cast, things that had shaken out differently.
Yes, sir. So, and so all the rage in the Game of Thrones questions, right, is how and how are we looking timeline wise? Because you've mentioned that you've kind of architected out the storyline for seasons 4 and 5. Do those go beyond the comic book? Okay.
The comic book really was more of a sales document that just covered those first 2 episodes of season 1. Now, in terms of what I brought to the show when we first started off, you know, I was working on Stargate, and I assumed Stargate, every season we worked on Stargate, I assumed it would be the last, and we kept on getting picked up, and that really allowed me to really flesh out the backstory, the stories of these characters. So when it came time to actually producing Dark Matter, I had a game plan. I have worked out the arcs and the backstories for all the characters. I know where their journeys began. I know where they're going to end. I know where each season begins and ends. You know, we're heading toward the finale on Friday, and we're going to have a pretty kick-ass finale that opens the door to a whole new chapter in Dark Matter, one that I think fans are going to, you know, really love, especially if you're a sci-fi fan. It doesn't get much better than this. And then, you know, just I have the ending in mind. I have the final sequence and the final scene of the series in my head. I imagine it as a 5-season story. And the nice thing about having the plan ahead of time is it has allowed me to really seed those ideas and set up stuff that I can pay off down the line, whether subtly or more overtly. You know, one of the things I mentioned, and I don't know if I mentioned it the last time I was on the show, was the whole Sarah thing. You know, I knew that I wanted to bring her back. It's just sometimes a matter of the timing. And if you look back at episode 7, when we first introduced Sarah and the whole sort of the When Did the Android storyline, she dies, and then we cut back to the room, and it's a shot of 5 standing over the body and the stasis pod, and she kind of gives it a look and kind of cocks her head, and you're wondering, you know, that's kind of a strange reaction. What is that reaction? And, you know, you find out, you know, 2 seasons later that, you know, she had that idea. So, I mean, it's kind of gratifying to be able to set that stuff up and pay it off and have fans go back and say, oh, I didn't notice that, or you know, okay, cool, that makes sense. And, you know, the whole real thing, you know, in kind of an unsubtle way, we've kind of been hinting at the fact that he's a lot darker than like the other characters. Like 3 comes across as like an asshole really in that first season, and I can't believe how many people hated him in terms of the fans. But we begin to kind of, you know, redeem him in the eyes of the fans, and they begin to really love him. Whereas Rio, in the very first episode, Fi was talking about a memory she has, and she says, you know, my stepmother sent the guards to get me, you know, but, you know, I carved out their eyes and left them for my mother to find. And it's like, these are the acts of a very, I guess, suspect individual. And then when, you know, later on that season, when he runs Akita through, you know, his mentor, it's kind of a shocking moment. But for him, it's like he thinks of the things through logically. Akita is a threat. And it's the same way he deals with his stepbrother when he takes the throne. And, you know, at the end of episode 210, he's been a fairly consistent guy, memories or not.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing for any students of history. When you look back at things like World War II, there's a very from that culture, there's a very pragmatic approach that very much embraces absolutism. Often decomposing things down to binary matters. You know, in certain fragments of Eastern philosophy, I think, and so it's interesting to see a character portrayed as such. You know, in the midst of what is a very highly complex overall plot and tapestry that you've woven in terms of the fictional mythology, in a lot of ways for people who study decision making and warfare, it is a little pure, right? Because there are certain situations you get into, you know, particularly as a decision maker, where you're presented an almost innumerable set of variables to juggle, and quite often the way you get to the final decision is to just simply strip all them away and decompose that very complex problem down to the 2 variables that are the most important, and that creates your tiebreaker. And that's kind of the sense of, that's the thing that I feel, and that's called to mind when I see Ryu. You going through the, as he mentioned that, heavy is the head that wears the crown kind of decisions that he's had to make.
Right.
So yeah, it's very interesting. Awesome. Season 4.
Yeah.
When about would you be looking to start shooting?
That's a very good question. I mean, last year, people point out that we received the pickup September 1st, but in all fairness, last year we started later. This year we started a month earlier. Last year we got our pickup after episode 9. This year we're heading to the finale. We've yet to hear a pickup. So, I mean, I don't know. Ideally, I would have loved to have started production in mid-November like we did last year. Last year, we did 3 episodes before Christmas. We came back. We did 5. We took a week-long hiatus. We came back and finished 5. We were done by May. And so we had the episodes ready to roll, in mid-June. This year, I honestly don't know. I mean, basically, we started the writer's room in June. We kind of fleshed out the stories. I kind of knew, like I said, I approach each season like the installment in a book series. I know what the beginning, middle, and end is going to be. I know the journeys. I just need the help to fill out those details. And we've got our stories, and things have kind of stalled as we've honestly waited for, definitive word about our fate.
So even with that schedule last year, man, that seems like things were tight. I mean, you ran up till May, maybe with a little comfortable margin, but you were still running up to right about like 30 days of wiggle room before the premiere, or?
Yeah, it's never. Those early episodes are in the pipeline. Back in November, we finished shooting at the end of November, and then we get into editing, and the visual effects are what takes the time. But it's not really the earlier episodes that are the issue. It's kind of the later episodes. As, to be honest with you, the schedule kind of compresses, and you're kind of sort of scrambling at the end. So really, it's those last couple of episodes that are kind of tight. But in season 1, actually, we shot in January, and I think we delivered in July, and that was kind of tight. This year, we had more breathing room and wiggle room, which is kind of what I was kind of hoping for. But, I mean, again, it really depends on what the deal is when we get that pickup, and if there are any curveballs thrown our way. Like I said, we kind of have a game plan, but things may change. I mean, in terms of the overall story and the arcs, that's not going to change. But the way we attack the season may well depend on, other variables, I would say.
Right. So one question I had in the creative process is how much flexibility do you get in production? Meaning, so when you're doing movies, right, you kind of have the option to put that production schedule as you want. You can choose to do your more difficult shots first. I've heard of movies that shoot like the conclusion of the movie, and then go back later and shoot the intro, which is always weird to me because I'm like, how do the actors look like they know each other so well when that was actually the first scene that they shot? It's always strange to me. But
it really comes down to efficiency of schedule, and honestly, it's never shot chronologically. So, for instance, if we're going to go on location, for instance, a good example is episode 9, our Back to the Future meets Stranger Things episode. We a lot of scheduling has to do with location or with guest cast. So, for instance, rather than we have like a couple of exterior scenes that we basically I think there's that park scene. There's a walk and talk with 2 and 3. There's a walk and talk with 5 and 6 when she gets I think the cupcakes. There's a scene where they sit down in the park, and Melissa's character greets the dog, which is actually her dog, her French bulldog Taya. And so all those scenes were shot on the same day because it just makes more sense from an efficiency standpoint to basically just get all the trucks together, get everyone together, go to that spot, get everything done there, and then move off. For instance, a lot of the Ishida Palace scenes over the course of the season were shot in blocks. So instead of an Ishida palace scene being shot within the body of an episode will maybe save like a day's worth of Ishida palace scenes for one specific day on one specific episode. So it really comes down to efficiencies.
Great. So, and my final question that I'm going to ask about the creative process is, and again, I'll try and ask it very, very carefully, so you can maneuver around it if you need to. So one of the things that I've noted across the 3 seasons, season 1, the crew of the Raza is the crew of the Raza. Yeah. Season 2, we introduced new crew members who were taken off the chessboard at various points throughout the season, and kind of a little bit of the same thing here, although they were kind of taken off the chessboard all collectively at once. So there's tons of questions around that. Like, is that intentional? Like, maybe I don't ask that question because clearly with you it is always intentional, I think, for the most part. But what is the story arc, plot, storytelling element that you've been trying to convey with that? Because I haven't. That's one that I'm not confident that I've got my head wrapped around.
Right. For me, these people come out of stasis. They find out they're the worst of the worst. They're very bad people. And at some point they decide they're going to seek, let's say, it's this road to redemption. And it turns out it's easier said than done, because while they may want to let go of the past will not necessarily let go of them. And so, the scary thing is that they are, at the end of the day, not only a danger to themselves, but they're a danger to the people who befriend them, who ally themselves with them. One is a great example of a character who ultimately he didn't really belong, and he kind of pays the price. Devon is another character who kind of seeks his form of redemption when he encounters the seers. He's filled with such self-loathing, and he's given the opportunity to essentially save Nyx's life. And in that last act, he does save her life by not giving her up. And the sad thing is that there's no one around to acknowledge it. At the end of the day, they think he's just left, and there's kind of like the fact is that it's a sad ending. There are sad endings all over every story has a sad ending. There are degrees of sadness, and that one is a particularly sad one. In the case of Nyx, she's one a character who really bonded with two in particular, who became an actual member of the crew. And, like the others who came before her, kind of paid the price. There's that core group that has survived to this point by very much being that kind of that core family unit. But it's something that too has to deal with constantly, and something that she faced in that first episode back. The fact that it feels like everything they touch, kind of crumbles to dust. They can't have nice things. And when Rio says, uneasy lies a head that wears a crown, he's acknowledging that about Tu, but also acknowledging it about himself. The fact that the burden of command is so great that really, at the end of the day, you're going to suffer losses. You go back to that conversation you had with Truffaut. You suffer this. And there are a lot of sad moments, but you got to soldier on, and that's what makes you a great leader is how you deal with these little losses, and essentially that's what they have been. I mean, the show's called Dark Matter, maybe not literally in reference to dark matter, but they're amid the humor of the series, there's a lot of darkness and loss.
Yeah, and now that I do understand that, it's I appreciate it more, because in that case, the framework through which I view the continuity of the whole episodes as a set is in one, like you said, I guess we saw the tragedy of one. In season 2, we also saw a lot of characters who kind of became entangled with the crew and failed to achieve escape velocity, right? Didn't get away fast enough. It's kind of like it's kind of like the people who are inherently drawn to the bad boy or the bad girl, and so enamored are unable to break away. But then in this season, it makes the role of Adrian and Solara more important because they do achieve escape velocity. Yes. And there's almost a more coming of age kind of honor to the whole thing in terms of Solara steps on board the ship and she kind of immediately knows what's what. And maybe seems like the whole time she knew there's a good place for us to be now. But these people, the people around these people get scarred. Right. And this is good for Adrian overall. This is a good growing experience from him. But at the end of the day, we need to not fool ourselves into thinking that this is a safe place. And it's a good growth story for Adrian because despite his youthfulness and naivety to a certain extent, he grasps that too. And ultimately, he's the one who makes the decision to extract them from that environment. So, yeah, no, I feel like that completes the whole set.
That is a great take. Like you said, I love sort of, allusion to escape velocity. And that's just it. I mean, basically, these are two characters who, in the end, don't stay, and they make the decision. He realizes this is dangerous. He's a guy who deals with danger on a daily basis, but realizes, he's in over his head here. Makes the decision to go, which buys him, the opportunity to maybe we'll see them somewhere, down the line. Hopefully season 4. Who knows?
Yeah. It would be very interesting to see a more seasoned and street smart Adrian, and some transformation of Solara, but I still want her to be Solara. But it would be interesting to see them more so appearing as equals, and then encountering the Raza crew and kind of being the ones who tell them what's what, or this is how things work here. So, yeah, tons of potential for seasons 4 and 5.
Yeah.
So, on that note, I'm kind of curious. So say we do get a season 3. If you kind of had a feeling that we weren't going to get so we're waiting on season 4, right? That's what it is? Yeah. So say you had a feeling that season 5 wasn't going to come up. Would you try to wrap things up in season 4, or would you just kind of like let it progress naturally as you originally wrote it?
I would like to progress naturally as I wrote it. I would maybe move up some of the answers, and I would probably end the season in a satisfying fashion that could act as an ending. And then if we did get that 5th season, then I would tell the story I wanted to tell in season 5 and give it the ending, the actual real ending that I want to get. So I mean, I'm definitely going to save my ending for a 5th season, and hopefully, like I said, we get the opportunity to tell it. I mean, it would be such a luxury, just because in this business you just never know. I mean, we were just very fortunate to have 3 years. The fandom has been great. As I point out, we're in 2018, it was 2018. No, this is 2017. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. This year we're like the number 2, most watched scripted show, original series on Sci-Fi, and yet at the end of the day, that doesn't guarantee anything. I'm quite anxious about our prospects, to be honest with you, about a 4th season, and I'm expecting to hear word, if not the end of this week, then maybe the end of next week. I mean, in season 1, we didn't hear back about a pickup until after the finale had aired. So, maybe history will repeat itself, and we're gonna have to wait. Hopefully, it's a go.
Yeah. It's kind of weird. I've noticed there's this trend now where you don't see a lot of long going 7-season, 5-season shows anymore these days. Whereas it used to be, with Battlestar Galactica and Star Trek's, things could go, or Smallville, very long seasons. It just seems that's changed this day and age. I don't know if you want to comment on that, if you've noticed that too.
Yeah, I mean, I think it has to do with a lot of things. One is there are so many shows out there that, it's very easy to, not only for audiences to switch off, but for networks to give up and look for the next hot thing. I mean, in our case, every series, most series show a degradation in viewership season to season. But actually, we've been pretty good. I think we're off 10% from last season. So in that respect, we've kind of held. Another thing is, obviously people look at ratings, but there are just so many different ways to look at ratings. There are overnights, which is what people used to look at in the past, because people would watch on TV and they'd watch the commercials. But nowadays, people watch time delayed on their DVRs or PVRs, and now we count plus threes, which are the people who watch it within 3 days of airing, and then the plus sevens, people who watch it within 7 days of airing. But it's one thing that that has just frankly frustrated me, that I would talk about way back in the Stargate days, is sci-fi audiences tend to be younger, they tend to be more tech savvy, and they tend to not watch TV in traditional ways. So, as much as I would love the fans to tune in and watch it live, realistically, that's not how people watch TV anymore, and certainly not young sci-fi fans. So, yeah, at the end of the day, I don't think the viewership numbers fairly reflect the viewership itself. But, at some point, maybe the broadcasters will catch up with present day technology. Hopefully, it won't be too late for our show. I don't know.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and it's an interesting thing you mentioned too, right? Because you guys are in the Friday night slot, which for sci-fi is good in terms of stacking a bunch of sci-fi shows together. But you mentioned that target demographic. Once they're married, depending on who they marry, maybe they do watch that Friday night. But the vast majority of that audience, like you said, they're out. Like, even when I was home when I was younger, I was on my Xbox 360 late on Friday nights, right? So there's and we talk a lot with websites I've worked at and doing this gig, right? We talk a lot in this day and age of there's just too much stuff, right? I talk about the geek struggle, or the geek renaissance, right? And it used to be I used to have to pick, well, what game am I going to play now? And what show I wanted to watch wasn't an option, because, like you said, it was on at a specific. But now, like, and admittedly, I'm probably a little OCD, man, but my task list of like comic books, games, movies, TV, and just playing with my devices is like the most complicated time management scheme I've ever created. And I frequently crumple the paper up, throw it away, and start over, right? It's just
I don't know how you do it, because basically, I mean, I have a show to produce. And I do, and I write, but I also read a lot. I read like everything and anything, genre, nonfiction, whatever. I do read comic books. I've always been a comic book guy, but I've always been the kind of guy who will start by picking up every title and then slowly losing interest and dropping them. And right now, I'm maybe reading like a half dozen titles I read on a regular basis. But gaming is something that I could just never get into. I have a buddy of mine. He's on The Expanse, Kaz Anvar, and he does the voice of, I think is it Altair, in Assassin's Creed.
Altair.
Altair, sorry. And he keeps on telling me, you got to get into gaming, into gaming, so because that's another venue into writing. But I just know if I get into gaming, then that's it. I mean, I'm not going to be sleeping. I'm not going to have time for anything.
Well, you're absolutely right, and one of the things I struggle with is sleep, right? Because I'm now married, I have kids, there are those responsibilities. My time for geekitude is like from like 9 p.m. until 6 a.m. in the morning, and very frequently the choice I make is to do that instead of sleep. And there are days that's a bad choice to make, right?
Right.
So yeah, it is what it is. So my last question that I wanted to ask you, Mr. Rolazzi, is back kind of to Dave's question. I was a little surprised at your answer, although I see that it kind of it's a nice balancing act. Because one of my when he asked the question, I thought one of your responses might be, I've scripted this thing out. I'm going to tell my story for season 4, and if it ends there, it ends there. And I thought that might be your answer. And the question that I actually want to ask is because of the incredible complexity of story extension in the 21st century content industry, in terms of, that 5th season could be told in a comic book format, like Whedon did when he extended the Buffy and Angel Tales. There's the potential to get picked up by Netflix, DirecTV, Hulu, a lot of these streaming services directly, or to go to a premium channel, right? So, and I'm certainly not asking you to get into any of those discussions or deals that have gone on. It's more just a general question of how has that factor in the content industry further complicated all the decisions and content creation decisions you have to make?
Well, to be honest with you, not as much as you would think, because while theoretically it seems, well, we can just go to Netflix or we can just go to somewhere else, there are a couple of obstacles, one of which is licensing fees. So essentially, if, let's say, a broadcaster backs out and says, we don't want a season 4, you need someone else to step in, and someone else has to step in and pay that chunk of cash. And that's not always a given. The other thing is the way the financial structure is set up is you've got, for instance, in the case of Dark Matter, Sci-Fi is our first window. We refer to it as first window in the US because they have the rights to air it first in the US. Space Channel is first window in Canada. We have an international deal. We have Netflix as kind of a second window. In the US, I mean, the deals differ. In the US, for instance, season 3 will air 1 month after the finale. In Canada, I think season 3 won't air until 1 month, maybe 1 month before or after the season premiered. So it'll be much later. And you get into issues like you did with, I believe it was Agent Carter, which was a show that I think Netflix seriously wanted to potentially pick up, but because of the deals that were in place and what was promised to which territory, it just didn't make financial sense. And this is what we're kind of running up against. I mean, and then the other things are contractual issues. SG1, Stargate SG1, you're familiar with the show, but that show went 10 seasons. And after it was canceled, we had the opportunity to go to Apple and potentially do an 11th season exclusive on Apple. And we were in serious talks until a point where it was, someone pointed out, contractually, it wasn't something we could do at the end of the day, just because of the wording of a contract. And so that fell apart because of the contract. But if the contract hadn't been there, we would have done an 11th season of SG1. So it's frustrating. I say it's the options are there, but they're just really, really tough. And another thing you're up against is timeline, because if, let's say, Sci-Fi backs out, you may want to try and go to Netflix, and you may want to try to go somewhere else, and either they say no, too much money, or no because of the territorial stuff, or but you have a certain timeline. You start losing crew. Worse, you may start losing cast, and then after a while, I mean, you're paying for stage space and not using it. They'll reach a point where the production company's like, I'm going to cut my losses and scrap the sets, and at that point, you're done. So I mean, theoretically, it's possible, and certainly hopefully we won't go there, and sci-fi will say, hey, let's go for a 4th season. But I mean, I don't know. It's kind of a scary proposition.
So, Dave, did you have any other questions that you wanted to ask?
No, that was good. Yeah.
Yeah. So Mr. Rossi, as I've said before, I can't. Words are not enough. I'm afraid that is the only cliche I have to express our gratitude and thankfulness for you.
You guys are great. I love your takes. I love the fact that you support the show. I'm a big supporter of the fans supporting the show. So I thank you for that. Maybe we'll do this again for the finale. If you could actually DM me a reminder, just because I'm actually in the process of packing up this week, and I'm actually moving next Thursday. I'm leaving Vancouver. That has been my home for 12 years. I moved here, or actually more like 17, 18 years. I moved here for Stargate, and I'm actually moving to Toronto on the other side of the country on Thursday, next Thursday. So, DM me. I'm going to try my hardest to make it. I think so. You'll be doing this again next Wednesday night, or is it?
Yeah,
Wednesday?
Next Wednesday.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So drop me a DM. Things will be a little crazy here, but I would love to just pop in for a bit and chat.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much, sir, for joining in tonight. We really appreciate it. Again, on no notice.
Sorry to surprise you.
No. We're at least partially prepared for it now, rather than the first time where we were completely had no idea on how to handle it. So that's a wrap. This has been episode number 10, Dave, of So it was Dark Matter, episode 12. It's episode 10, I think, of the Dark Hypotheses fancast, a Dark Matter fancast, full of spoilers. So, so episode number 10 for us. We have one more episode to go, one more episode of the show for this season. Mr. Rossi has indicated that he'd like to jump on, so you can join in to see that for next episode. And it's also midnight here, so at this point I've been up for I think 20 hours. So forgive me if I'm tripping over a little bit of the closeout. But thanks so much, Mr. Rossi, for joining in. Thanks so much for anybody who happened to swing by and join in for the live show. And even if you swing by and watch the archive version, days from now, weeks from now, we still appreciate it. And thank you so much. Be sure to like the episode, subscribe to the channel, keep up with everything going on the E2KG network. Dave and I are actively in discussion to figure out exactly what we're going to do once this season of Dark Matter is over. We've talked about doing the Defenders. We're trying to work through some scheduling things, and we will continue to be rolling out the entertainment-oriented content on the network as best as we can. So thanks so much once again for myself and Dave Pecci. This has been the Dark Hypotheses podcast. Mr. Malazzi, anything else that you wanted to plug or add on our way out?
No, I will leave you to your gaming. You've got I think what did you say, 6 hours?
Right.
Ahead of you? Good luck.
Yes, this might be a night that I make the choice to get some sleep. So.
All right.
So thanks so much for joining in, everybody. That's going to do it for us. We are out of here.
All right.
All right. Thanks so much, Mr. Malazzi.
Thank you.